Fantastic. Okay. So got a couple of objectives for today, and hopefully these are understandable and relevant to why you're attending. First of all, we want to describe the difference between two similar sounding terms, user story acceptance tests and user acceptance testing, or UAT. And let's see here whether we can get this to, there we go. And secondly, we want to give you a few heads up on writing more effective, right user story acceptance tests, and also more about the appropriate use and creation of user acceptance tests, UAT. And I will just mention that you know, in our hour, we really don't have time to go into either of those in great depth. I've got seminars, one-day seminars on each of those topics. Be glad to talk more about those. In general, most of us are probably familiar with user stories that the format that Mike Cohn suggested a number of years ago has really been accepted as the format for user stories. As a particular type of user, I want or need to do something or another so that I get some benefit. And so Agile has a kind of a bumpy road with this. On the one hand, everybody uses user stories and they generally are considered requirements, and yet Agile often also kind of tries to tap dance around that. Now, to be fair, there's what's called the CCC, which recognizes that there are three aspects to user stories. The first aspect is called the card. That's the as I want, so that. And that goes on the front of an index card, so it's very brief. And this Agile tends to use this disingenuous phrase that user stories are not requirements, but rather placeholders or reminders for conversations. On the back of the card is the confirmation, and that's the user story acceptance criteria and or user story acceptance tests. And I'll acknowledge right off the bat that many people don't really make distinctions between those two terms. Okay? And then the third C is that conversation that the user story is the placeholder or reminder for. And the conversation occurs between the project team, the developers typically, and whomever they choose to converse with, whether it's a product owner or other stakeholders or whomever. And as a result of that conversation or those conversations, the developers create working code. And then when that working code passes the user story acceptance tests, that gives the confirmation that the user story has been satisfied. Now, what we're dealing with today is primarily just the confirmation part, the user story acceptance criteria. And on the one hand, there's a lot said about that, about user story acceptance criteria. On the other hand, there's not very much said. It's kind of paradoxical. So at its fundamentals, user story acceptance criteria are there to tell you whether or not a user story has been implemented adequately. I mentioned that there are these two terms, user story acceptance criteria and user story acceptance tests. User story acceptance tests are the executable instances that demonstrate that the user story acceptance criteria have been met. But I am the first to acknowledge that very few people actually make hard and fast distinctions between the two, and I'm not going to get hung up on it either. What has also come to be accepted in the community is that the most common format for expressing user story acceptance criteria or tests is given, when, then. And even though this is simply the same old format that tests have taken since who knows when, a lot of people get hung up on this and get confused by it, including, ironically, a lot of experienced testers. And some of you in the audience may have experienced confusion trying to use given, when, then as well. So given relates to the preconditions that have to be present before the test can start. When relates to the inputs and/or actions, and then is the expected results. So a test case is ordinarily inputs and/or conditions and expected results, and they're often coupled with preconditions. So this is really nothing outlandish, but it's the format that has come to be accepted. Now, I'm going to tell you that the very first thing that gets in the way of user story acceptance tests is the user stories themselves. And too often, user stories are not right. They're not appropriate, they're not adequate, okay? And testing that a wrong user story has been met really provides no value. Okay? Now, there are other things that further complicate user story acceptance tests, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we go. But let me get you involved. So I'm going to ask you all to give me some feedback. And I know that it says enter it in the Q&A, but Wendy tells me that we'd be better served if you entered it in the chat box. So I want you to pretend, if it's not already true, that you belong to a local professional association. It might be IIBA or PMI or the Software Quality Group of New England or some similar group. And your group wants to improve its performance. And so we might have come up with a user story for your chapter's main requirement that says, as a chapter leader, I want influencers to know of upcoming meetings so that they influence their associates to attend. So that's an example of a user story that fits the format that as I want so that. Okay, think you'd agree.
Hi there, hope you enjoyed that last clip. My name is Michael Maludis, and if you'd like to watch the full 60 minutes of that last webcast, while also gaining complete unlimited access to our entire library of IT learning, simply visit our subscribe page at greatpro.org/subscribe. Unlimited annual access is $199 per year, but if you use the coupon code LEARN2EARN, you can drop that membership fee to just $149. That's less than $13 per month for unlimited access to over 1,000 hours of on-demand career development, covering the entire spectrum of IT management best practices, including business analysis and requirements, software development, quality and testing, risk management, process improvement, project management, and even digital transformation. But your membership doesn't just give you unlimited access to our vast learning library. You also get free access to our mobile app, as well as direct access to our network of over 300 of the world's leading IT consultants, all of whom are dedicated to putting practical knowledge at your fingertips so that you can learn more and earn more. I hope you will join me in becoming a member of the Great IT Professional and advancing your career with us. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button above so that you get notified whenever we publish new free webcasts each week of the year. Thank you for your time and best wishes for your continued success.